In my opinion, there are two kinds of escapes. There are clean escapes and there are messy escapes. Clean escapes is something like a straitjacket or the barrel. They always look the same when you do them up. Messy escapes are things like chain and rope, where they're kind of going around you and there's bound to be inconsistency to the pattern. Making an escape with a flexible restraint like a rope or a chain look good and look difficult is surprisingly hard, especially when you're getting a random person from the audience to tie you up.
I get one guy lying on my back and basically I carry him like in the air. This is a trick that looks impressive as hell. Like it's like guaranteed crowd pleaser. But for me, it's like, okay, it's comparing to other tricks I do, it's actually like a really, I'd say out of level 10, I'd say it's level 2 or 3. So it looks very, very impressive. But for me, it's actually quite easy.
My second to last trick is I pull the tablecloth off the table, leaving everything on the table. It's quite easy. It's pretty easy. A couple of times I've been doing gigs and another performer has said, oh, I always wanted to try that. And I've said, okay, hold it here, do this, do that, and really go for it. And they've nailed it first time and their little minds blow. It's not hard. It's hard to do it every single time reliably to the point where people will pay you to do it. But I don't feel bad about that.
6 fingers handstand, it doesn't get the much. So I do a handstand on my 6 fingers and it hurts, you know. Every time I do it, it still hurts, but still it doesn't get the reaction as much as I want it to get.
I quite like that it is at its heart quite an easy trick, especially with, you know, the props that I have chosen and the tablecloth I've got and all of, you know, you buy the right equipment to make it work every time.
I do a lot of little sort of angling of my body, and it's not to make the escape easier. It's to make the escape look as difficult as it actually is.
Backflips, can't do it anytime. I can do it anytime. And many people tell me, Hiroshi, you can do a back, you should do a backflip. But just in terms of efficiency, you know, I know it's cool. I know kids like it, but it's just hasn't been a necessary element or component of my show.
My standard finale, where I put the tablecloth back on the table underneath all the things, which is a genuine trick, which is difficult. A lot of people think that is not what it appears to be. People think that there's something gimmicky about the table or the things on the table or the tablecloth, or it's interesting because it's a trick most people haven't seen before. Their brains go, no, it can't be that. It must be, there must be something else going on.
I think ultimately we, as a street performer, like if we've been doing like long enough, we know that it's not the tricks we do, but it's more about engaging communication. And I really love it. I think that's one thing that I just love street performing, you know?
The essence of a trick is to tell an audience, I'm going to try and do this. And here's why it might be difficult. Here's what might happen if I don't do it. Here's what will happen if I do it. And then you do it. If you're good enough, then the audience should react because you made a promise and then you delivered. That's what a trick is, right? A trick is a promise delivered. Ideally, a trick is a promise over-delivered. So yeah, anything can be a trick, absolutely.
If a pair of handcuffs is just stuff, if juggling clubs is just stuff, and you can make people care about that, there is some routine out there in the ether waiting to be written in which eating a sandwich is a trick. Just as an escape apparatus is not inherently dangerous until a person interacts with it, any movement or item, anything is not, it doesn't have much meaning until a person interacts with it. We're given a reason to care about that. So I think, yeah, you could turn anything into a trick.
I got this toaster built by my dad. I wanted to throw a throwing knife at the exact time the bread came out and pinned it against the board. So this is probably the hardest trick I've ever learned, and I never got it every time. So it took so much longer than any unicycle trick. And I thought that this was like, this is amazing. This is going to be the best thing ever. And other performers have really liked it, but it turned out to be not very practical. Since that one month run that I learnt that trick, spent 2 years learning that trick for, I haven't done it again.
I once saw in Linz in Austria, the street festival, I once saw a clown, I don't know who he was, didn't get his name. You know, one of those things you see someone else at a street festival and then you never see him again. He was a silent clown. He had a nice crowd on a street, and there were parked cars on the street. And he got a few volunteers out of the audience and got them to start bouncing a car. And he moved it across the road. And that's not a trick, but that was his finale, and it killed because the whole crowd were like, "We moved a car!"
I actually never got it every time. It was like a 1 in 4 time thing, which is something you shouldn't perform it, but I really wanted to do it, and I don't know, I think it's super cool. And I made a funny thing out of it, where every time I missed, I got more serious, and I ended up like painting war paint on my cheeks in Nutella, and kind of like built it up bigger and bigger, which could have ended up actually being better than doing the trick itself.